how complex does my music actually need to be? That's a question I receive on a near daily basis, and I think it's important to address because a lot of composers want to make their music as complex and intricate as possible, but then on the other side, you have composers who think their music is too simple and it's difficult to find that balance. So in this video, I want to share a personal piece that I've written and share with you my personal approach to complexity and simplicity, and hopefully you can walk away with a few actionable steps to really apply to your own music as well. Before we really dive in though, if you want to check out my complete composing and orchestration process from start to finish, I'd love to give you free access to my workshop down below in the description called the Complete Composer's Framework. And it walks through literally step by step how I think about conception of ideas and then go through putting the piece together from start to finish all the way to that polished final master. So I want to give you free access to that. You can watch it whenever you'd like, and I hope you find it super valuable. And again, you can watch it whenever you feel like as well. So with that being said, let's kind of jump into the piece and I'll share with you my personal thoughts. All right, so here we are inside of Love's Rapture. This is a piece I use a lot actually for my tutorials. And I think it's just because it encapsulates a lot of what I teach in terms of the topics and all of that. So I kind of want to split this up into three different sections. The first thing about complexity is form. And, there are pieces of music that can go for hours, but my personal style of writing, I like to write short and sweet pieces that are self-contained and that can deliver a short but sweet message in a punchy period of time. So in this case, you can see that this piece is 3 minutes and 25 seconds long, so basically around 3 to 4 minutes. And the structure of it is basically AABA. So it's like a ternary form, if you will, with a classic ABA structure, but the A is basically repeated. So let me just quickly play this for you a little bit. I'll skip through just so you can get a sense of what this actually sounds like. So there's a bit of an intro, but here is where the main theme begins. Okay, I'll stop it there for now. So basically, you heard the bulk of the piece. So there's the main theme. That's the first A section. Then I repeat the A section again, but with a full ensemble. So in terms of contrast, I'm switching up the ensemble entirely, right? We start with a more intimate approach with just the piano and the solo viola, and then that grows into the tutti orchestra where the energy level basically rises from like a 2 all the way up to like a 9 or a 10. Then we have the B section, which maintains the energy level, but it continues to change things up a little bit musically. So now we have a different melody, we have a different chord progression. So that really tells us that it's a completely different section of music, hence why it's a B section. Then after that, we return back to the A section one last time, bring the energy level back down to around a 2, and use an English horn to round things off, and the piano comes back as well. So you can see the form is very, very simple. And to me, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than this. As a traditional rule of thumb, I like to have pieces at least containing 2 contrasting sections. So that's an A section and a B section. After that, you can do pretty much whatever you want. You can continue with different contrasting sections like A, B, C, D. You can go back to your A section, A, B, A. You can incorporate both elements like A, B, A, C, A, D, A, like sort of a rondo form. Lots of things are available at your disposal. So I personally think the simpler you can go, usually the better. And this is where I always talk about the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results will come from the simple things that you do, and the final 20% is sort of the added sprinkles of complexity that you put in there. So you could see it's a very, very simple form, A, but it's really the orchestration and the arrangement that kind of carries the story of the piece and raises the emotional arc and then brings it back down. And that's kind of what carries it through as well. So a pretty simple form. It really doesn't need to be that complicated. And also keeping in mind like what you're writing for. I knew I wanted to write a digestible piece of music that was self-contained, that could be listened to in a couple of minutes, and that's basically what I went for here. So I opted for a simpler form, and I wanted to write a piece that could fit within that structure, and so that's kind of what I was aiming for there. So that's the first element of simplicity versus complexity. It's just figuring out what form you want, but I tend to find that simpler forms are usually more effective because you're basically forced to get the point across in a short amount of time, and I think that is a really actionable way to think about things, right? Trying to deliver a message in as quick of a time as possible. So number 1 is form. Number 2 is melody. This is where I'll pull up the ChordieApp and show you actually how simple this piece really is. So we're in the key of F major, and the melody basically sounds like this. Okay, so that was with a bunch of chords and stuff. So let me just play the melody once by itself. Right, so the thing I wanted you to notice there is that this melody is entirely in the key of F major. I'm really not using too many non-chord notes here, and every note pretty much is diatonic. So that's the underlying simplicity. It has a feeling of comfort, and warmth and nostalgia, at least to me, because I've continued to stay in this key of F major. It basically is very at home, Like we have an appoggiatura, a non-chord note there, but it resolves very cleanly back to the C, which is the 5th of the chord. And basically every melody note fits within the chord that's being played at the same time. So this melody note F is in the B flat major chord, hence it's sounding very warm and very appropriate. Then the next chord, D minor, F is in there as well. A couple non-chord notes here. Little dissonance there. But this is just a B flat major 7, right? So it sounds very appropriate, almost a bit jazzy as well because of that major 7. And then we resolve to the C suspended, sus4 basically. And then we continue. And again, that C belongs to the chord. And again, the B flat major chord has D in it, which is the melody note, so very, very familiar. A minor chord, A on the top, makes sense. Going to the C makes sense, right? Because C is also in the A minor chord. D minor chord, A on the top, F on the top, G minor 7, F is the 7th, C7, G is the 5th of the chord, and then F literally is the root of the F major chord. So very, very comforting. So it just goes to show that complex melodies don't always equate to great melodies. In my opinion, the simplest melodies are the best melodies. Now, there are characteristics to great melodies, not only just staying in the key, but also having a good distribution of steps and skips and leaps, understanding how to change the rhythms. And you can analyze tons of melodies to find these patterns. But I feel like the simpler you go, the better you're probably going to get. And I typically recommend to my students starting with a very simple approach and then adding more stuff to it afterwards to create a bit of complexity, but never the other way around. You don't want to start with something super, super complex so you don't really have a core identity of what the main theme actually is. I would rather start with something a little simpler and then add on top of that, but it's really hard to take away if you already have too much. So that's the second thing, is melody. The third thing is harmony. And this is where a lot of composers go to town, right? They want to write super complex music, create all these different chord changes that sound so cool, but it can get really easily fatiguing on the ears. So just to show you the harmonic structure of this, it's also very simple. We start with a 1 chord, 1, 6 to 4. Pretty classical at the moment, right? Going from 1 to 4 is pretty standard. Then I go to the 6. Then I go to the 3, go to 4, to 5, back to 1. So 4, 5, 1, literally just the regular authentic cadence. And again, we go to the 3 to the 4. So by the way, the 3 serves a very similar function to the 1, 6, or the 1 chord in first inversion. So I really like using those interchangeably sometimes. I started the piece using the 1, 6, going to the 4, but the second time around, I wanted a slightly more plaintive, sadder quality, hence why I used the 3 instead, which is a minor chord in a major key, before going to the 4 chord. Then after that, we went back to the 3 chord, to the 6, to the 2, to the 5, to the 1. So now we're just following the circle of fifths to round out the phrase. Okay, so using quite traditional methods here to accomplish the harmonic structure that I was going for. But hopefully you felt that it sounded natural and it flowed well and accommodated the melody, because that's all it really needed to be. The only complexity, maybe you wouldn't even consider it complex, is that switch from the 1, 6 to that 3, the minor 3 chord, that second time around of the theme, or that's that little motive there. But even that is just a slight change in color. That's not even really anything out of the key. Later, I use like a minor 4 to a 5 instead of just a regular major 4 to 5. So that's a little bit of added complexity, but that's the 80-20 I'm talking about. 80% should be nice and simple and sweet, and then you can spice it up with the remaining 20%. Maybe alter a couple chords here and there, add in an extension, or make something have an additional chord as a passing chord or transition chord or something. But I think the bulk of your music can be simple, and that's all it really needs to be. All right. So I hope that kind of made sense. And that's one of the reasons I like to use this piece as an example. Again, just because it touches on a lot of things I talk about on this channel, compositionally, orchestrationally, mixing wise. It's one of my more recent pieces of work. So, there's a lot of things I can pull from it that are still relevant to my approaches today. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you want to check out my full complete process of writing music and orchestrating and stuff, then again, check out that free workshop down below in the description, the Complete Composer's Framework. And I'll literally show you how I go from an initial idea all the way to the polished final master. And again, I hope you really find it valuable. It's helped a lot of my students, and I would love for you to have access to that as well. So thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.